satisfies? Do you believe in a God that opens eyes? Do you believe in a God that tells you lies? Or do you believe in me? Do you believe in a God that brings you down? Do you believe in a God that wears the ground? Do you believe in a God that makes you bow? Or do you believe in me? Do you believe in a God that satisfies? Do you believe in a God that opens eyes? Do you believe in a God that tells you lies? Or do you believe in me? Do you believe in a God that brings you down? Do you believe in a God that wears the ground? Do you believe in a God that makes you bow? Or do you believe in me?
It's beyond common sense. It's Lanny Sense with Lanny Swerglo, KCAA's resident gay, woke, liberal, pot-smoking, race-mixing, tree-hugging, left-handed, science-affirming, Jewish, humanist, atheist, a white evangelical Christian nationalist, worst nightmare. Oh, hey, welcome to tonight's show. Here it is on March 4th. You're heading towards the Ides of March. Isn't that exciting? And I want to welcome you to Lanny Sense. Here joining me in the virtual studio is our progressive curmudgeon, Sam Clowder, and ex-Pate. We're going to talk a little bit about that later on in the show. And incorrigible documentary filmmaker, Gregory Franklin. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us. And if you in the listening audience would like to call in and say something, join us, ask us a question, make a statement, whatever, you can do so by calling 909-383-1000 or 909-383-9000. Please call in. We would really love to hear from you and talk with you. Even if you, especially if you don't agree with us, that would make it even more exciting, wouldn't it? If you don't agree with us. But yes, but how dare somebody not agree with us, right? Yes, of course. Well, we've had quite an exciting week this week here in the country with the blow up with Zelensky and Trump and he's going to be and the tariffs just going into effect today, which is going to be an amazing effect on the economy. I've been listening to the radio, and what they're predicting is a depression. A depression is going to because it's going to upset the economic apple cart so much. What's going on? We shall see. But it's what 50 days that Trump has been president now, and what has been going on is just unbelievable. But you better believe it because it really happened. Yeah. Nobody has any comment on that? You all just.
Oh, I have.
I'll tell you this one. Go ahead. You go ahead, Gregory.
Go on, Gregory.
I have a lot. I watched that press conference where the dump truck and his lapdog went after Zelensky. And I'm telling you, I was just, my jaw was on the floor. I can't believe they were treating him like that. And second of all, that was just an embarrassment globally for the United States. And what he did was with that conference, basically, he shifted the balance of alliances globally by siding with the Soviet Union and, Hungary and
Not
Belarus
the Soviet
and
Union,
China and all that.
Not the Soviet Union. Soviet Union is gone. It's now Russia again.
Okay. but that doesn't make it better, Lanny.
No, it doesn't. It might make it worse.
So you're talking about a depression. You mean economical. Last night, I'm in Cuenca, Ecuador, by the way. That's Cuenca behind me. And last night, I'm in an Airbnb for a couple days, and we went shopping for eggs. I think we paid 5 cents an egg, about 60 cents a dozen. What's the price of eggs in the United States right now?
It's about $5 a dozen, isn't it? If you can
Here
get
it's
them.
more than
I've
that.
heard people
It's
paying
more
10
like
and
8.
12.
What did you say? You said more like 10 or 12, Gregory? Really?
No, I
I've
said
heard,
it's about
yeah,
$8 here.
$8.
Yeah.
$8 a dozen. Well, that's what you get with Trump. But Lenny, I think it's important that Russia puts more action behind Ukraine. I'm not Russia, pardon me. I think it's important that Europe puts more action behind Ukraine. They have boots on the ground. I would not want to see the United States send boots on the ground in any situation because it has too many repercussions down the line. But I think it's totally who couldn't think it's totally inappropriate to do what they did in the White House? Just rude, But Zelensky is a real smart cookie, and he comes out publicly saying he's going to continue to work with them because he has respect for the American people and both parties and the Congress and the system. But I think it's great that if it's really Europe that needs to go up against Russia over this, because they wanted to make Ukraine part of NATO, and that's why Putin is invading Ukraine, to keep it from being part of NATO. Putin is a paranoid bastard, okay? He doesn't want NATO next to his border because it's like an extension of the United States to him, because NATO is run by the chief of staff of the United States military. That is the top officer in NATO. I think in the long run that Ukraine will be better off by getting more support from Europe. But what you've got to look for is Trump going to deny military weapons to Europe, because Europe will then funnel them to Ukraine.
It's already on pause right now. It's already on pause.
Yeah.
The funding for Ukraine. I read about that this morning.
So you think that Putin invaded Ukraine solely because of a fear of it becoming a NATO country?
Yes. There's been a lot of information on YouTube from the Parliament of the European Union, and they've been conducting research, and they've had several worldwide experts present seminars to them, and that's what I think. And
but of course, 2 more countries joined NATO as a result of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Sweden and what was Finland or Norway? One of the 2 countries joined. You didn't want to see that.
I think they ought to all be part of NATO. They ought to all be there. But that's just what I think. I mean, but the war in Ukraine happened because, well, it began because Putin had his eye on their natural resources, and that's when he went into some of the eastern territories. But he invaded Ukraine for real because NATO had been developing going through protocol to accept Ukraine as a nation, as a member.
Interesting point. Because Putin had already taken over Crimea.
Right. That's what I mean.
Well, anyway, but I think that what happened in the White House, I mean, it's no surprise, because a few days before that, the United States voted with Belarus and Russia against everybody else in the United Nations about Russia invading Ukraine, and that was just when I read about it and heard about that, I was just astounded that United States sided with Russia on this issue. It shows you just how much this whole thing has changed since Trump became in office. But maybe that shouldn't be a surprise.
Really distinguish between the United States and the divided states? I mean, prior to Trump, it really was the United States, but it isn't any longer.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think it was that united before Trump got into the picture. I think he just opened up the chasm that was already there.
Well, except the one thing is that he was able, in the 2016 election, that's when they began to pull the working class away from the Democrats and to the Republicans. And and a lot of it is that remember when Bernie Sanders was running against Hillary Clinton, he was talking about the exact same issues that Trump was talking about, the exact same issues, but he just had different answers and how to address those issues. And and that's why a lot of people believe, and I am one of those people, believe that if Bernie Sanders had run, he would have retained a lot of those workers that peeled off from the Democrats and voted for Trump, because Clinton wasn't talking about those issues, but Trump was, and Bernie would have talked about them, and he would have given other answers that I think a lot of people would have agreed with more than they would have agreed with Trump.
Absolutely. I'm on that page. I remember all this stuff happening, and I'm going, man, if the Democrats would have allowed him to run like they should have, he would have beat Trump. he would have beat him.
Yeah, I remember I was running in 2016 to be Democrat to the Democratic National Convention as a Bernie Sanders delegate. I didn't win. I didn't even come close. There was 30 people running to be for one Bernie Sanders delegate position for the assembly district that I was in, or the congressional district that I was in. So I was in the top 10, but I was nowhere near close to being number one. So, but I would, so yeah, but that, I really, if you look back, he says, when did this all get started? When did this all get started? And I always go back to the Florida election where Ralph Nader ran in the Green Party, pulled 93,000 votes of the Florida electorate, and Gore lost by less than 500. And that most of those 93,000 Green Party votes would have gone to Gore. They would not have gone to George Bush. And so I said, so a lot of this just falls on Ralph Nader running out. But you got to say, well, he shouldn't be afraid to run just because he's going to sit there and upset the world order for the rest of the next generation. But that's what happened, because if Gore had been elected president, he would have never handled 9/11 like George Bush did. He would never.
9/11 wouldn't have happened.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know about that. That it could have still happened, but Gore would never have invaded Iraq.
To bring that up, Lanny, Condoleezza Rice warned Bush 2 months in advance of 9/11.
Really?
Yes.
So
yes,
warned that they were going to fly planes into the World Trade Center?
And Cheney just ignored it. They wanted 9/11 to happen so they could have a blank check to wage war on Iraq and Afghanistan and wherever else they wanted to wage war on. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I don't believe for a moment that the U.S. government was involved in 9/11, but they had plenty of opportunity. Keep in mind that one of the 20 hijackers was taken into custody in Minnesota 2 months earlier. There were so many opportunities to 9/11 would not have happened under Gore. I don't believe it for a minute.
Well, maybe, but you're right about the suspicions, because Bush let all the Saudi Arabians get on the planes and get out of the country, because almost all the 9/11 hijackers were from Saudi Arabia.
You mean the Saudi Arabian relatives of Osama bin Laden?
Yeah, right. Yes, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, they got them out of here.
They were all Saudis.
Yeah, I think there was 20, wasn't there? And 19 of them were from Saudi Arabia, something like that. And
I just do not believe that 9/11 would have happened under Gore.
Well, maybe not. Maybe they were more likely to have listened to that.
You're right about the election, and in fact, that really came down to one vote in the Supreme Court.
That's right, 5-4. 5-4. And of course, then later on with in 2016 with Hillary Clinton running against Trump, she just ran a lousy campaign. She should have run him. They didn't pay any attention to the swing states. She spent all the time in Texas trying to win Texas for some crazy reason. And if she had been going up to Michigan and Wisconsin and campaigning there, she might have gotten because he didn't win by very many votes. And in those states, and the whole thing would have been different. But what is what is, and the question, like we talked about the other week, and people are talking about, if Biden had stuck to his word, I'm going to be just a one-term president, I'm going to be a transitional president, and allow the Democrats to hold a convention and all that kind of stuff, might have made a big difference in the election.
I'm sure. When you go back to Gore, Florida wasn't the only problem. Gore didn't win his own state. If Gore had won his own state, he would have won the presidency.
Yeah.
And Gore wouldn't allow Clinton to campaign for him. Clinton had a really high approval rating when his 2 terms were done, and he wouldn't allow Clinton to run from him because of the impeachment and controversy over his sexual.
Monica Lewinsky.
Yeah.
So
he did
Monica
the
Lewinsky.
Remember at the convention, he planted this big wet kiss on his wife.
Oh, that was
Gore just ran a really poor campaign, just like Hillary did. and what happened in this last election. And you really can't fault Kamala Harris because she had so little time to deal with it.
No, she had 3 months.
And so much to deal with. But it was a horrible campaign.
Yeah.
The Democrats have not been smart.
No, they have not, and we wouldn't be in the position they were for a lot of things. I'm not saying the Republicans are smart. I don't know if you could say things broke the Republicans' way or something. I mean, I don't know that they really did things so wisely in the election, but maybe they did. I mean, like, we talked about the fact
that still not being smart, Lanny.
What?
The Democrats are still dumb as bleep.
Yeah. Well, the Republicans took over the media.
Sanders, I don't see anybody really saying anything and trying to do anything about it. Do you?
Oh, I don't know. I think Jamie Raskin and OAC and who's the other one? There's a lot of people that are talking and have been talking through this whole process. I mean, I don't think that the Democratic Party is basically stupid. What I think is that a professional liar, a professional manipulator, convinced a lot of people that he was going to do something that he had no intention of doing, and that's why so many voters did break for Trump.
Well, yeah, Trump kept saying on day one, I'm going to lower prices. Remember, he said that. Day one, I will lower prices. Of course, that didn't happen. Prices have only been going up. And, of course, with this new trade tariffs, they're going to go up even more. It's going to be interesting to see what he says tonight in his it's not a State of the Union speech. It's whatever he's doing.
Democrats in power never enforced the law against Trump.
No.
They were feckless.
No, we talked about that. Yeah.
And, if there's no, this system of balances, this is all this bleep crap about the three aspects of government. It's not working anymore. It hasn't worked since, you mentioned it, the 2000 election, when the Supreme Court gave it to Bush by 1 vote.
Yeah.
The checks and balances are supposed to be the judicial system works independently and holds everybody accountable to the law.
And the Republican Party fixed that.
Or Trump would be in jail instead of the White House.
I think it's the Republican Party has been trying to dismantle the checks and balances in our government since Richard frickin' Nixon, for crying out loud. I mean, you see each Republican president since then have been pushing those boundaries even further, and that whole thing about the Supreme Court justices, the last 3 of them that Trump put in to the court, were there because of their willingness to overturn Roe v. Wade and to favor whoever the chief executive was at that time.
And of course, this first appointment, there should have been Mitch McConnell refused to allow appointment. Barack Obama's appointment to the Supreme Court for over a year. They refused to, have any kind of a thing there. So,
yes, but you had 3 legitimate opportunities to put Trump in prison.
Yeah.
You had one in Atlanta, one in New York, one in the lower district of New York City, and one on the federal level. Well, and nobody could enforce the damn law.
The thing is, the first 2 that you mentioned were just stymied by getting appeals.
Hey, Lanny, we have a caller on line 1.
The one that has no excuse is Merrick Garland. He should have charged him under the Department of Justice. He should have done it almost right away, and he did absolutely nothing. So I really place a lot of Trump being there today at Merrick Garland's foot for not enforcing the law in that first 2 years after the election.
But look at all the cases that the Southern District of New York, that's federal, and that the city of Atlanta, that county DA, look at all the cases they prosecuted and convicted in 4 years or less.
Well, but Trump was able to get those cases. He was able to get rulings delayed. But Garland would not have had that problem. He would not have had that problem.
You don't have to have rulings delayed.
What?
I mean, I don't know how many of us have been through the criminal court system, okay? But there are certain ways to get it delayed and delayed and delayed. Eventually, you have to answer for it. Now, The judges and the courts could have stopped the delays at any time. They didn't need to give Trump that much freedom. And if they had stopped the delays, then there would have been convictions before the election.
But they did it. The judges did it.
No, that's my whole point. I mean,
yeah. Well, some of those judges were Trump-appointed
judicial system in the United States. Look,
some of those judges were Trump-appointed judges.
I haven't been saying it for decades because there is no liberty and justice for all. Yeah. The liberty and justice is a commodity to be purchased. It doesn't matter what color your skin is, whether you're black, red, yellow, brown, or white. All that matters is the color of green, how much money you've got. That is justice.
All right. Eric just informed me that we have a caller on line 1. So, Eric, bring him in or her in or whoever it is in. Hello, caller.
Hello.
Who are we talking with?
It's a friend of yours. I've got
Chris.
some good news that Pope may be Trump may be seeking a higher office.
We'll bite. What higher office?
Well, he found out that there had been 13 popes named Innocent, and he wants to become Pope Innocent the 14th.
Oh, beautiful.
Is Trump? Trump's not a Catholic, is he?
Oh, you don't have to be a Catholic if you got a lot of money and want
to. The first non-Catholic to be Pope.
He's not a Christian either, and he's elected as one in the White House.
Oh,
the first Pope was Peter, and he wasn't a Catholic either.
Yeah, that's right. He was Jewish.
Well, the first 2 popes were they were Catholic? Who were they?
Well, Peter was the first one. Paul was the second one.
Oh, okay. And they were all, well. They didn't have the Catholic Church back then, did they? Well,
they were still popes.
I don't know.
They were Jewish.
Popes.
They were, yeah. Well, that's. I wonder if can he be president of the United States and Pope at the same time?
That's what I was going to ask you guys if you knew that.
There's nothing in the Constitution that says you can't.
Yeah, I know.
Nothing in canon law that says you can't either.
Well, maybe we can get rid of him that way.
Yeah. Well, but becoming Pope would be perfect. I mean, there's no institution out there that's more misogynistic than the Catholic Church.
No kidding.
And
authoritarian too.
Authoritarian. That's right. That's absolutely right. Infallible. The Pope is infallible. You can't argue with him.
No, this guy's going to be innocent.
He's going to be innocent.
Innocent the 14th.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll let you guys go.
Oh, well, it's wonderful talking with you, Chris. Thank you for calling in.
Okay, buddy.
Bye.
Bye.
All right. So that was cool. Chris called in. He was on a show months ago. He's a walking encyclopedia of drug war statistics. Unbelievable, the stuff that he's written a really great book called Parlor Whale. It's available on Amazon. Parlor Whales. It's all about the war on drugs, and the statistics that he has put together are just mind-boggling. So shows you how we've wasted over $1 trillion on the war on drugs. So anyway.
And today, drugs are more available on the streets all over this country anyway than they have ever been in history after all that money was thrown at it.
Well, that's because prohibition doesn't work. It never worked. It didn't work with alcohol, and we haven't learned from that. Prohibition makes things worse because it puts control of whatever it is you're prohibiting in the hands of criminals and takes it away from government agencies that would regulate and license it. And, this thing about, this is what bothers people, with like for cocaine, which is probably one of the biggest drugs that is illegal, that is used. The fact is most people who use cocaine, just like most people who use alcohol, have absolutely no problem with it. It's only a very small percentage. But there's these people out there that somehow think somebody there is having some fun And we can't allow that to happen. We can't allow people to have fun. And so they create this horrendous legal system that throws millions of people in jail, costs trillions of dollars, and so on. So anyway, but
that was absolutely what happened with marijuana in the what was it, the 40s and 50s. It's I mean, marijuana we know for sure is harmless, and it just got classified with in the same category as like heroin. And they were doing that because people were having fun. People of color were having fun. That's why
even worse. Even worse. Yeah, they have to suffer. They have to suffer. Listen, talking about people suffering, you know, one of the things that that's going to be happening is all these people that voted for Trump, they're going to be suffering. There's an article I read about a week ago about this guy who was in the paper industry all his life. He retired, and he took his life savings and he created a paper straw that would not dissolve, you know, so readily. It would last 24 hours or something like that. And he manufactured, he marketed, and he was selling like 1 million straws a month or a week or something like that. And then Trump said, we're going back to plastic straws. He lost 90% of his business, and he's going to be going out of business. And the funny thing is, he voted for Trump. And he says, the man I voted for put me out of business. And a lot of the people are voting. Look what's happening with the farmers right now. With, you know, was it 70%? A huge amount of the farmers' crops, from soybeans and wheat and stuff, is sold to China. And China has now put tariffs on all these products. So the farmers are going to be suffering because they're not going to be able to sell their products. And the other thing was, one of the major ingredients in being able to grow soybeans and wheat and stuff is potash. And 90% of the potash that's used in this country comes from Canada. So that's going to have a tariff on it. And the farmers are going to have to, they can't sell their stuff, and they're going to have to pay more money to grow the stuff they can't sell. And they voted for Trump. The farmers were big block for Trump.
I'm on YouTube a lot, and I'm seeing left and right people who voted for Trump are now having buyer's remorse. And there's just like thousands and thousands, possibly millions of people that voted for Trump who are realizing now that they just got conned. It's really that simple.
But one of the things that's happening that's going to be should be really upsetting to a lot of them is that is Medicaid. Medicaid provides health care to like 70 million people in this country, and and we spend like $800 billion a year on Medicaid and so on, and they want to, they're looking for money to cut so they can give the $4.5 trillion tax cut to the billionaires. And the number one thing they can look at that they can really make a change and get a lot of money is Medicaid. And they're going to be cutting it. They're going to be cutting it. And all these people that used to get their health care services through Medicaid are suddenly not going to be able to get it. And they're looking in changing the reducing the subsidies for the Affordable Care Act. And because Trump never liked the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare. And so a lot of the people in there who are on Obamacare right now are not going to be able to afford to buy the insurance on the market because the subsidies are going to be reduced. And I'm just wondering, I've read some of these people, they've been interviewed, and they said, well, everything's going to work out. They're still supporting Trump. But I wonder if 6 months down the line, they're going to still be supporting Trump. And I just wonder if people are going to start going out and protesting big time against all these cuts. And this is going to be up to the Democrats to organize them.
It's already started. I mean, you're watching town halls particularly for Republicans, where the citizens are just like in a uprising state. Where was this Idaho, where they tore that woman out of her seat and dragged her out of the auditorium because she wanted to ask a question about whether or not this was a town hall or a lecture. Just the other day here in Portland, Centennial High School is just right over there. And I went, we have a new congressman to replace, I think it's Blumenauer, who retired. Her name is Maxine Dexter. anyway, they're having a town hall at Centennial High School right around the corner from me. And I went, and I was probably about, I would say something like 5, maybe 10 minutes late, trying to find parking. And already the fire marshal had closed the door and stopped letting people in because it was packed. I think that, there is some awareness of the fact that what's happening in the United States right now is on a number of different levels, including morally, it's just freaking wrong.
Well, I just hope the Democrats are going to start organizing these major protests. We had a protest here in the Coachella Valley on the protest when on President's Day, and we had protest in Palm Springs. We had protest here in Banning, and I went to the one in Banning. And we had about, maybe 50, 60 people here in Banning. I don't know how many, they had a couple hundred people in Palm Springs. But you know what they did that was so stupid is they held these protests in Palm Springs at the Palm Springs City Hall and Banning at the Banning City Hall. Nobody's there on a Monday, especially on a holiday. So nobody hardly saw them. They should have held these things out on major streets where.
That's because the Democrats are too soft. The Democrats are pansies. And I've said it before, I'll say it again. Let me say it again, that these demonstrations are going to get big enough to become violent. They're going to be suppressed by government authorities, and the divided states are going to end up in a civil war. But not because of the Democrats, because the Democrats are too pansies. Listen, man, I've got the right to say this. I did it for 50 years with the Democrats, but when they couldn't enforce the law and put Trump in prison, they proved to me once and for all they aren't qualified to be in office. If you can't enforce the law, you are not an officer of the Constitution, and that's where the Democrats are. There's no question the Republicans don't belong there. All right, I've always opposed the Republicans. In fact, I was a key factor in the 1990s of relegating the California Republican Party to third-party status. Now, let me point out to you that not only in California, but in the United States, the fastest growing group of registered voters is declined to state, which is called independent. That means they're deserting both parties. But getting back to what you're saying, Lanny, the Democrats can't organize themselves. How are they going to organize a demonstration? It's going to happen organically. And you know what? It's better that way. I'm going to tell you, the California Republican Party hosted Trump in 24 last year, and I went to that. They had 2,000, 3,000 people in the streets demonstrating for Trump. Now, the Orange County Democratic Party, this is in Anaheim, the Anaheim Convention Center, actually Anaheim Hotel across the street from the Convention Center, and I called up the Orange County Democratic Party a week in advance. They had no plans to have a counter demonstration in Anaheim. And I pushed them to develop it, and I advised them, and I counseled them. And so they developed a demonstration. They had about 30 people who committed to come out to it. I got there half an hour late, and they were dispersing. Why? Because those hard-ass Trump idiots got in their face. Geez, I mean, they got in your face. Oh, whoopee-woo. I got to go cry. I got to go wimp out, and I got to leave. When I got there, that's what they were doing. I confronted those bastards, myself, and I, and a bullhorn from a friend. I confronted almost 2,000 of them taking photographs of me. I was yelling, Trump is a traitor, send him to prison over and over again. And I was careful enough to do it in full sight of many of the Anaheim City Police and sheriffs who were there. The California Democratic Party, the Orange County Democratic Party, the LA County Democratic Party are a bunch of bleeping bleeps, okay? What I want to call them is what Trump likes to grab by the bleep. You understand? Those are the Democrats. Trump is grabbing the Democrats by the bleep, and they're letting him get by with it.
Well,
I'm trying to feel my blood pressure again.
One of the things listen, I'm very concerned when these protests start, whether it's organic or organized by Democrats or unions or whatever. I think that the Trump is going to nationalize the Guard, send them in after these protesters. If you notice, almost every police union in the country supported Trump. All Trump has to say, go out and get these guys, and those police would love nothing better than to go out and crack down on these anti-Trump, anti-Magna protesters. And I think I think you're right. If things get really badly here economically, we may have some real problems. And I remember when George Floyd was murdered, all those protests that took place across the country were really, like the word you used, were organic. They weren't organized by any particular organization. They were kind of just sprang up organically. I know the one that I went to in Riverside here, they just sent out social messages. There's going to be a big protest in downtown Riverside. Almost 1,000 people showed up for the protest. And you're right, it can be done organically. That is if the social media still is intact, or if Zuckerman and Trump, Musk have fixed their media so people cannot get this kind of information out about rallies and protests and this kind of stuff, because that's what did it was the social media that got the people out. And the social media may be very well under a thumb of the billionaires that have all come and pledge allegiance to Trump now, and can hardly wait for his tax cut so they can get even more billions of their dollars added to them.
Well, we'll wait to see. I don't think social media is going to have that much to do with it. I think that
that's how these things, the George Floyd thing came about. All those protests were social media.
True, but if the organic, or if it becomes organic and these demonstrations begin on their own, they will have communicated enough information to each other that if their social media platforms are shut down, they will get even more angry and more violent. And they will have more people come out. I mean, there's some 20-year-old nothings who've done nothing but live on their phone, try to shut down their social media, and they'll go crazy. They'll hit the streets.
Social media is restricted. How are they going to get the word out to where these demonstrations are?
As I recall, back in the 60s, the way we did it was by talking to each other, by calling each other on the phone. Okay, it's called old school, baby, and it worked in the 60s to end the Vietnam War. Let me go back to one. You can't ever forget 1 week, the week that Martin Luther King was assassinated. There were major riots, violence, murders in more than 40 cities. The only one that didn't have it was Memphis, because RFK went to Memphis and pled with everyone to not riot, and they didn't. But that was as close as we got to a really live, violent revolution and civil war since the 1860s. Now the same damn thing can happen now, because Lanny, there's something called television, there's something called radio, and there's something called social interaction. Not necessarily social media. And again, we did it. We did it in the 60s without social network and phones. And if they shut down the social networks, then the 20s and 30s will riot just over that.
Most of the stuff in the 60s was being conducted through colleges and universities. And there you had places where you can distribute flyers and all that kind of stuff to a very concentrated group of people. And once they started going out, then word got out that there was this big protest. That's not happening in our colleges and universities right now.
The same thing happened last year over Hamas, over the abuse of Israel on Gaza. Remember?
Yeah. It wasn't to the extent.
There were takeovers of campuses, including UCLA, over that issue.
It wasn't close anywhere near to the extent of the Vietnam War protests.
Oh no, of course not, because they're not being forced to go fight the war like we were in the 60s.
That's right.
No, it wasn't. But it shows that they could do it. They could still do it, and it shows that they could do it live, in person, on location. And that's what's important. I think that these demonstrations will begin on the campuses, and that they will be confronted by law enforcement. They will have to move off the campus instead of quitting. In the case of last spring, if I recall clearly. When the police kicked them off campus, they didn't take their demonstrations off campus.
No,
This
we closed the campuses down.
exactly.
I remember at Humboldt State College, we closed
So
the
why didn't they go out into the
campus
streets
down.
to demonstrate? They didn't have any. They didn't have any direction. They didn't have enough motivation. In this situation, they will. They will to go off their campuses into the streets.
Listen, we're beginning to run a little low on time, and one of the things I wanted to talk about tonight was, Sam, you're now an expat. You're living in Ecuador, and you went to Fat Tuesday celebration today, correct?
Yes, in Cuenca.
Tell us what it's like being an expat living in Ecuador and going to celebrate on Fat Tuesday.
Well, they have a lot of fun shooting each other with foam and water guns and stuff like that. But I missed the parades. I mean, tonight we're going to go out clubbing to see what that's like. But as it turned out, all of the big celebrations and parades and everything like that was done on Saturday and Sunday. So I missed those because I just came into Cuenca yesterday.
I see.
But I'm new. I've only been here since a week ago Thursday, a week ago Friday, and I'm learning. But I really don't want to be called an expatriate. I'm an expatriate. I'm no longer a patriot of the United States. Expatriates leave for different reasons, and they aren't people who blend into the culture. They go to places like Cuenca. Cuenca is a city, beautiful town, 8,000 feet high, a UNESCO world. It's been
heritage site,
and the entire downtown is made of brick roads, and they're 2-lane roads. It's all 250 years old, and they just keep renewing it instead of gentrifying it like the United States. Knock down a skyscraper and build another skyscraper. They don't do that here. So Cuenca has about 600,000 residents, and 1 out of 10 is an expatriate. This is one of the largest, from the United States. This is one of the largest populations of United States citizens who've moved abroad. And they keep it a network, but they cloister each other, and they end up gentrifying the economy here. They're willing to pay several $100s a month more to rent the same apartment that an Ecuadorian would rent. Say, apartments $200, $250 a month for a 2-bedroom apartment. Now they'll pay $600, $700 a month, and that's not right. That's not right to the local economy. They don't blend. My point is, they don't blend in with the culture, and I fully intend to do that. I'm not going to hang out
Don't they help the country economically? I mean, they're spending all that money to live there and everything. It must create a lot of jobs for the Ecuadorians with all these Americans living down there, because they're not working.
No, it doesn't work out that way.
Yeah,
I mean, the minimum wage in Ecuador is $600 a month. The median income on an annual basis here in Cuenca is $12,000 a year. And if you triple their rent just because United States citizens are willing to pay it, then they become even more impoverished.
Well,
the fact is, it's like so many things in politics and economics. It actually works the opposite way that it was intended. It's not like we're blessing the economy of Ecuador with all this money from United States citizens. Not at all. The United States citizens, I mean, the cost of living here is about 35% of what it is in the United States at its highest. And that's not increasing. No, it's not. It is not a blessing for United States citizens to move in because of what they do. So they gentrify the place. They're willing to pay more money instead of observe the customs of the culture and do what the Ecuadorians do.
Well, gentrification is a problem throughout the United States in major cities where a blighted, usually a minority neighborhood, it becomes gentrified and the rents become too high for the people who are living there. So that's nothing. But the problem is that why aren't the Ecuadorians using this money and taxing these Americans, so that they can build, housing for the citizens of the country.
Because the United States citizens are not making incomes here. Now, if you open a business, your business gets taxed. But if your income is from another country, and this is the way it is all over the world, almost.
Really?
Yes, there's no tax.
So, like,
in the state.
if these people are making money from stocks or from Social Security and stuff, and this money is coming into Ecuador, they may be spending it, but it's not getting taxed.
It's not. There is something called a value-added tax, which is like it's equal to a sales tax, and they have raised that from 8% to 12%.
Well, value-added taxes are regressive.
That's it. I, as a United States citizen whose pension comes from the United States, am not required to pay a single penny of tax in Ecuador.
Maybe they should be,
except for that percentage. Well,
the value-added tax, everybody pays that. The Ecuadorians pay it as well as the Americans.
No.
No.
The they don't have to. The Ecuadorians can be exempt from it, especially at a certain age. But they can also file a tax return with copies of all their receipts and get it back at the end of the year.
What a hassle!
I know, it's like sales tax.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, in a couple of weeks, we're going to have Sam back on. He's going to give a much more detailed explanation of what it is to live in a country, to everything from finances to food to learning the language and all that kind of stuff. So it'll be an interesting show.
It's quite an adjustment, but I'll tell you what, I'd rather make this adjustment than to be in the United States of Russia. I'm sorry, the divided states of Russia, and have to adjust to that economy and that politic, and having to put up with all those idiots who think Trump is the second coming of Christ.
Well, there's a lot of people who are seriously considering moving out of the country, and I understand that there's more people going into Canada now than going the other way out. So, and that's probably just going to get more and more and more and more. So,
but Lanny, in my research, I found out that over the past 2 to 4 years, just before Trump was elected, that between 10 million and 30 million United States citizens have left the United States. Now, the government won't tell you what those statistics are. The government's going to tell you there's 10 million illegal immigrants and they want to get them out. But the government's not going to tell you how many United States citizens are so fed up with the United States they leave it once and for all. And I'm going to predict this. In the 2030 census, which will be released in 2032, the United States will, for the first time in its history, show a decline in population. And that's the beginning of the end of all this bull bleep that the United States is the greatest country in the world.
Well, yeah. If you look at all kinds of scales of what makes you a great country, the United States is nowhere near the top in so many of the things, whether it's health or it's education or whatever.
No.
We really
The United
sunk
States
down.
is #1 in mass murders. It's #1 in school shootings. It's #1 in proliferation of guns. It's the #1 bully of the world. There isn't anything positive that the United States is #1 in. And the only reason people go to the United States is for money. The United States is #1 in money, which means the United States is #1 in greed.
Yeah.
The United States is not a country. It's not a nation. All the United States is a business, baby. So forget about loving your neighbor and rip them off for all the money you can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, we'll see what happens. Like I said, the 2026 elections, it's going to be really interesting to see if there is a big change. Normally, in the off-year election, the party in power loses big time. And we'll see if that happens in 2026, if there is even an election in 2026. I got a sneaky hunch that
it really doesn't matter, because Trump's going to do what Trump's going to do, and nobody's going to make Trump not do it. If they were going to make Trump not do it, they would have enforced the law in the last 4 years and put him in prison.
That's
instead
right.
of the
No, but if the Democrats take over control of Congress, he won't be able to do it because he won't have the money to do it.
He'll be impeached again if what happens in 2026 works out like I think it's going to work out. when there are so many people that are disillusioned with what Trump has done to the United States in that period of time, I think it's going to be a landslide, and I think there's going to be a supermajority in the Senate and in the House of Representatives, and he will be impeached, and this time he will be convicted.
And maybe we can also impeach some of the members of the Supreme Court, like Thomas and Alito, for being crooks on the Supreme Court. Maybe,
I hope you guys are right for your own welfare.
Yeah, well, I sometimes wonder if I'm going to be here in 2026.
Yeah.
But I work very closely with the Democratic Party here in California, so the party is doing things to engage.
Would you tell the Democratic Party to make Trump quit grabbing them by the pleats?
Trump is the one that said, grab him by the pussy. That's our president.
You said that.
Sexual predator chief.
I've been called down for cussing, so I'm using the word bleep, but that's exactly what I meant to say.
Pussy is not
Tell
one
the
of the
Democrats
7
to
deadly
get some
words.
balls, okay?
Pussy is a cat, fuzzy little cat. That's a pussy cat. But our president said it. Of course, our president said 4-letter words all the time. At his rallies, he's very profane.
Listen,
and all these holier than thou Christians just think it's just so wonderful. Could you imagine how they would be in fits if Biden had said those kind of things?
Yeah, I know. But in all fairness,
they would have been just livid.
Gavin Newsom and the California congressional delegation have been really the most active anti-Trump group in the nation. In all fairness, they really have. It's just it's all words and no action so far.
Well, we're gonna be taking action, and I think it'll be interesting to see what happens over the next 6 to 8 months as Trump's policies begin to really filter down and people see just how bad things are. And Trump, he'll keep trotting out trans people to try to get people to not pay attention. He'll bring out Jesus, and we're going to make this into a Christian country and all this kind of stuff. And he'll drag the anti-abortion stuff out, but I don't think it'll work. I don't think it'll work this time. So we shall see. We'll
see. I hope for your guys' benefit that you're right.
Well, listen, I hope for the entire world, because what Trump is doing is going to upset the entire world order.
He already has.
Yeah, you're right. He already has. But he can make it even worse. And I'm just going to be interested to see if economically this country goes into a depression. It wouldn't surprise me, but we'll have to wait and see. And the thing is, part of the problem is the Republicans in Congress are absolutely spineless. He's taking away all these legislative powers, and they're not doing anything to stop him. The Democrats can't stop, but the Republicans can, but they're not. They're just going to give him whatever he wants because they're afraid that if they don't give him what he wants, when the primary comes, they're going to get some MAGA nut running against them, and they'll lose the primary.
Well, that's because the Republicans just want to get reelected. They don't give a damn how or why or what they do. As long as they get reelected, and get to collect free money from the U.S. government for their pensions. That's all they want is to get reelected.
And now I've got to wrap the show up. Eric has just told me there's like a minute left, so I want to thank all the people who are listening to the show. I hope you found it of interest and entertaining. Please let your friends know that we're on every Tuesday at 2 p.m. here on KCA Radio. You can also go to kcaradio.com and you can scroll down to my show. You can listen to past shows if you like. And so, and keep on getting active. What we're talking about here is going to take active people like you to actually not just get out of your chair and get active and start protesting the things that are going on. And so I think that's going to wrap us up here now. So I want to thank Sam. I want to thank Gregory. I want to thank myself. You can hear the music. Hey, this is on KCA Radio, the station that leaves no listener behind. And this is Lanny Sense, the show that leaves no gender behind. Good night.
NBC News on KCAA Loma Linda, sponsored by Teamsters Local 1932.